Today, the story I'm going to tell you is from America and it will seem entirely fictional to you. However, let me assure you that the story is entirely real. So, let's get straight to the story. The story begins in Portland, which is not only the state but also the largest city in America. On the afternoon of Wednesday, 24th November 1971, a man between the age of 40 to 45 arrives at Portland International Airport. His height was about 6 feet or slightly less. He was dressed in dark colored business suit, white shirt, black tie, and dark brown shoes. He was also wearing a black raincoat over his suit and was carrying a black briefcase in his hand. There wasn't much crowd at the airport that day because the next day, 25th November 1971, was Thanksgiving Day in America. When people meet their acquaintances, they give each other gifts and express their gratitude. It is a holiday throughout America, so people reach their relatives' homes in advance. Therefore, on 24th November 1971, there were very few people at the airport. After arriving at the airport, the man goes to the Northwest Orient Airlines counter. He buys one-way ticket from Portland to Seattle, paying $20 in cash. At the counter, he gives his name as Dan Cooper. The flight he gets the ticket for was flight number 305 and the plane was Boeing 727. After purchasing the ticket, he heads towards the boarding gate. At that time, there were neither metal detectors nor any kind of security checks at the airport. The only thing needed for boarding was the ticket. After completing the boarding process, Cooper boards Northwest Orient Airlines flight number 305. He goes to the last row and sits in the middle seat, 18C, placing his briefcase on the seat next to him. The seat on the other side of him was also empty. He then puts on the pair of black sunglasses, lights a cigarette and orders a bourbon and soda drink. Besides Cooper, there were 35 passengers on the flight, along with 3 flight attendants, 1 pilot, 1 co-pilot and 1 flight engineer, making a total of 42 people on the flight. The flight was approximately 2/3 empty. The flights take off from the Portland International Airport at its scheduled time of 2:50 p.m. and it was supposed to land at Seattle Tacoma International Airport about half an hour later. Shortly after the flight takes off, Cooper takes out a note from his pocket. He stops the flight attendant named Florence Schaffner, who was passing by, and hands her the note. Florence takes the note, smiles at him and walks away. Florence assumes that it is just some flirtatious man trying to give her his phone number, something that had happened to her before. Without reading the note, she puts it in her pocket. When Cooper sees that she hasn't read the note, he calls her back and softly tells her in her ear, "Miss, you better read that note. I have a bomb." As soon as Florence hears this, she becomes alarmed. She opens the note and reads it, which says, "Miss, I have a bomb and I want you to sit next to me." Florence then calls her fellow flight attendant, Tina McClaw, and shows her the note. After reading the note, Tina also becomes nervous but still asks Cooper if he is joking. Cooper then tells Tina to sit next to him because he wants to show her something. Tina sits down in the empty seat next to him. Cooper opens his briefcase, showing her 8 sticks of dynamite bundled in 2 sets of 4, a battery, a numerous wire connected to the dynamite. Seeing this, both Florence and Tina become very scared. Cooper then says that the plane has been hijacked and he wants to convey his demands to the plane's captain. Cooper writes his demand on the note. His demands was $200,000 cash by 5 p.m., 4 parachutes, 2 primary back parachutes and 2 reserve front parachutes, and a fuel truck standing by on the runway to refuel the plane when it lands. He also warned that if there is any trickery, he will blow up the plane. Florence takes these demands to the flight's captain, William Scott. Meanwhile, Tina stays seated next to Cooper and informs Captain William of the entire situation using the plane's intercom. Immediately afterward, Captain William contacts the Seattle Airport Air Traffic Control and informs them about the situation. A man named Dan Cooper has hijacked the flight number 305, has a bomb, and has issued certain demands. If his demands are not met, he will blow up the plane. Upon hearing this news, the airport authorities are thrown into the state of panic. The FBI is immediately notified of the hijacking, and the local police and the airport security are also put on alert. Cooper tells Tina that the plane will not land in Seattle until his demands are met. He also specifies that the $200,000 he has demanded should be in $20 bill. Tina communicates this information to the pilot through the intercom, and the pilot then relays it to the air traffic control. Ultimately, it was decided that they will meet his demands for now and plan to capture him later when the plane lands. Meanwhile, the flight 305 reaches Seattle, but because Cooper stated that the plane will not land until his demands were fulfilled, an announcement was made to the passenger to prevent panic, explaining that there was a minor mechanical problem causing a delay. The plane circles around the airport for the next 2 hours. During this time, Cooper smoked cigarettes, lighting them with the help of Tina as he was holding the bomb's detonator in one hand. During this time, Tina asked Cooper why he chose to hijack Northwest Orient Airlines specifically, wondering if he has any vendetta against the airline. Cooper replies that he had no particular grudge against the airline. It was just a coincidence that he chose this one. During this 2 hours, the FBI arranges for $2 million in $20 bill from Seattle First National Bank and notes down the serial numbers of all the bills so that if the money is spent in future, Cooper can be traced. Today, in 2024, the value of those $200,000 is approximately $1.3 million. After arranging the money, they also arranged 4 parachutes from a local skydiving school. At 5:24 p.m., air traffic controls informs the flight captain that all the Cooper's demand have been met. The captain then informs Tina, who relays the message to Cooper. Cooper then permits the plane to land and instructs that it should be parked in a remote runway away from the main terminal. He also orders that all the windows on the plane be closed before landing to prevent anyone from seeing inside. Finally, at 5:45 p.m., flight 305 lands at the Seattle Tacoma International Airport. The airport manager arrives at the rear door of the Boeing 727 with $200,000 and 4 parachutes. At that time, the Boeing 727 was the only commercial plane that was with the rear door and includes a staircase. Tina McClaw exits through the rear door and collects the money, which was in a sack due to the bulk of $20 bills weighing approximately 23 pounds, along with the parachutes. Tina brings the money and parachutes to the Cooper. During this time, the plane was being refueled. Once Cooper's demands were met, he allowed all 35 passengers to disembark, as well as 2 flight attendants, including Florence, the first flight attendant he gave the note to. Many of the passengers had no idea that the plane had been hijacked. Only a few who saw the money and parachutes being brought on board knew something was amiss. Now, only 5 people remained on the Boeing 727, and they were Captain William Scott, co-pilot Bill Ratazak, flight engineer Arnold Anderson, flight attendant Tina McClaw, and Dan Cooper himself. Cooper then makes several more demands. First, to fly the plane to Mexico. However, he was informed that the plane cannot fly directly to Mexico without refueling. Cooper was given 2 options for refueling stops between Seattle and Mexico, and that was Phoenix in Arizona and Reno in Nevada. After some consideration, Cooper agrees to refuel at Reno Airport. Secondly, Cooper demands that the rear stairway of the plane be kept open. However, he was told that the plane cannot take off with the rear stairway open and was given the option to open it while the plane is in the air. Cooper agrees to this. Thirdly, he demands that the plane's speed should not exceed 200 miles per hour. Fourthly, the plane's landing gear should remain deployed throughout the flight. Fifthly, the plane's wing flaps should be set at 15 degrees. The airport authorities and the FBI agreed to all his conditions. At 7:36 p.m., approximately 2 hours later, the plane takes off from Seattle Airport to Reno, Nevada. About 5 minutes after the Boeing 727 is airborne, Cooper tells Tina McLeod to go to the cockpit and lock the door from inside, ensuring that he is not disturbed. After listening to him, Tina heads towards the cockpit. Before locking the door, she takes one last look at Cooper, who was standing in the middle of the plane, securing something around his waist, probably the money. Tina then locks the cockpit from inside, leaving Cooper alone in the back of the plane. When the plane took off from the Seattle airport, two F-106 fighter jets from the Air Force were deployed to follow it, one flying above the Boeing 727 and one below. The weather was stormy with heavy rain and strong winds. The plane maintained a speed of 200 miles per hour and was flying at the altitude of 10,000 feet. Around 8 p.m., a light in the cockpit indicates that the rear stairway had been opened and there was a change in air pressure, indicating that outside air was entering the plane. Captain William attempts to communicate with Cooper via intercom, but Cooper did not respond. No one in the cockpit dares to go back to check, as Cooper had strictly forbidden anyone from coming to the back of the plane. About 10 to 15 minutes later, everyone in the cockpit feels a sudden jolt and a strong change in air pressure inside the plane, causing their ear to pop for a while. However, everything returns to normal shortly afterwards. About 2 hours later, at around 10:15 p.m., the plane lands safely to Reno International Airport with the rear stairway still open. At Reno Airport, FBI agents, Reno police and security personnel were already in position, prepared to apprehend Cooper. As soon as the Boeing 727 lands, they surround the plane. However, when they board the plane, Cooper was nowhere to be found. At the seat where Cooper was sitting, they found two parachutes, one used and one reserve parachute, a few cigarette butts from the cigarette Cooper had smoked, and a black tie with a tie clip. The agents thoroughly searched the plane but found no bomb, no money, and no trace of Cooper. This implies that the Cooper had parachuted out of the plane, money in tow, into the night somewhere between Seattle and Reno. The question was, where did Cooper jump? Neither anyone on the flight saw him jump, nor did the fighter jet pilots who were trailing the Boeing 727 above and below. The FBI learns from the flight crew that a jolt was felt around 8:13 p.m., indicating that Cooper might have jumped from the plane at that time. Based on the flight path and the timing, Cooper would have landed about 64 kilometers north of Portland, near the area around Ariel, Washington and Lewis River. That night, with the help of the flight crew members and passengers, the FBI creates a sketch of Dan Cooper. This begins one of the largest manhunts in American history, known as Norjack. Starting the next morning, a search operation was launched covering several kilometers of the area where Cooper might have landed. The area was densely forested with large trees, making it akin to finding a needle in a haystack. Despite extensive ground searches with large team combing through the terrain for months, aerial searches using helicopter and even attempts to search the river, nothing was found. There was no trace of Cooper, no body, no money and no parachute. As soon as the news hits TV channels and newspapers, it spread like wildfire. Everyone wanted to know who was this mysterious man who vanished into the night from a flying plane. During this time, a newspaper mistakenly published his name as D.B. Cooper instead of Dan Cooper, and he became famous by this name. The FBI then investigated the name Dan Cooper, which he had given at Portland Airport to buy ticket, but they found no one by this name. The FBI also released the serial number of the bills given to D.B. Cooper to public, hoping for assistance. Some newspaper even announced reward of up to $5,000 for anyone who found a single bill with those serial number, but still nothing turned up. The FBI believed that the given condition when Cooper jumped from the plane, it was almost impossible for him to survive. They proposed some theories. One theory was that Cooper was not prepared to jump. He He didn't wear proper clothes suitable for skydiving, nor did he had a proper shoes, gloves, goggles or a helmet. The parachute he chose also couldn't be controlled well. It was raining heavily and was very dark. So after jumping, he likely had no idea where he was heading and might have hit a tree, resulting in his death. Another theory was that he fell directly into the Lewis River. In November, the temperature of the water would have been below freezing. Cooper had tied a money bag weighing about 10.5 kilograms around his waist, and his weight combined with a parachute would have made things even more difficult. The cold water might have led his death within minutes. However, doubts and questions arose about the FBI theories because no trace of Cooper's body was ever found, keeping the investigation ongoing. Almost 9 years later, on 10th February 1980, an 8-year-old boy named Brian Engram was on a picnic with his parents at the beach called Tena Bar on a Columbia River. While digging in the sand to build fire, he discovered 3 bundles of $20 bills. These bills looked very old and the total amount was $5,800. The serial number matched those of the bills given to the Cooper. The FBI conducted several excavations at Tena Bar but found nothing else beside these 3 bundles. Despite this evidence, instead of solving this case, it only added to the mystery. Tena Bar was about 27 kilometers from the area where Cooper was believed to have jumped. The question arose, how did the money end up there? One theory was that some of the money fell into Lewis River when Cooper jumped and somehow made its way to the Columbia River, eventually reaching Tena Bar. However, the problem with this theory was that Columbia River flows in the opposite direction from where Lewis River joins it, making it impossible for money to reach Tena Bar naturally. Moreover, the idea that all 3 bundles of money floated together and ended up at the same spot on the beach naturally seemed highly improbable. This raised question: did Cooper survive the jump and hide the money at the beach himself, or did someone else find the money and hide it there? There were no definitive answer. In America, many people began to view D.B. Cooper as a hero. They admire the way he hijacked the plane, vanished into the thin air and eluded the FBI. His act was seen as a perfect crime and people celebrated his cunning. At Ariel, Washington, near the area where Cooper is believed to have jumped, there is a store where people still gather to celebrate Cooper's success on Thanksgiving. The FBI continued their search for Cooper, investigating every possible lead. Over the years, they scrutinized numerous suspects, some who were reported by their own family members claiming their relative were D.B. Cooper. Yet, despite thorough investigations, they never found conclusive evidence to prove anyone was D.B. Cooper. The mystery remained unsolved and D.B. Cooper's true identity was never discovered. The investigation continued, and by 2011, the FBI had targeted over 1,000 suspects. One of the most significant suspects was Richard McCoy Jr. On 7th April 1972, just 4 months after Cooper's disappearance, Richard McCoy hijacked United Airlines Flight 855 using hand grenade and a pistol. He used a fake name to buy his ticket similar to Cooper and wrote his demand on a paper. He demanded 4 parachutes and $500,000 instead of $200,000. The aircraft he hijacked was also a Boeing 727. After receiving the money, he jumped from the plane's rear door just like Cooper. However, 2 days later, on 9th April 1972, the FBI captured Richard McCoy and many believed he was Cooper. But one thing that stood in the way of proving McCoy was Cooper was his age. In 1971, when Cooper hijacked the plane, McCoy was only 29 years old, whereas the eyewitness estimated Cooper to be between 45 and 50 years old. Moreover, Richard McCoy neither confirmed nor denied being Cooper. 2 years later, in 1974, Richard McCoy was killed in police shootout, taking all answers with him. However, DNA testing of cigarette butts that Cooper smoked, which could have proven whether Richard McCoy was D.B. Cooper or not, was not available in 1972. Later, those cigarette butts mysteriously disappeared from FBI custody, and the FBI had no explanation for this disappearance. On 8 July 2016, the FBI announced that they had exhausted all the efforts to find D.B. Cooper. Over the years, they had used all their manpowers, but they could not determine where Cooper came from or where he went. After 45 years, the FBI finally admitted defeat. Apart from Richard McCoy, there were several other important suspects such as Kenneth Peter, Robert Rackstraw, Len Doyle Cooper, Barbara Dayton, Robert Lipsey, Sheridan Peterson, William J. Smith, Dwayne Weber, and many more. However, as of 2024, 52 years later, the mystery of D.B. Cooper's identity remains unsolved. He vanished mysteriously into the night sky, and neither he nor his body was ever found. This case remains the only unsolved hijacking in American history, still shrouded in mystery. This was the story of D.B. Cooper, who hijacked the plane, vanished into the thin air, and eluded the FBI. Thank you for watching the video. Your support means a world to me, and I look forward in bringing you more compelling stories and discussion in future. Until next time, take care and stay curious.